Good, good, good. Sorry I missed our call last week. I was
Oh
out.
no, that's totally fine.
So, you guys are part of the uh, Rajat's high school amnesty group.
Yeah, we're part of not we're part of I'm part of that group with Rajat, but like um we're also a part of a nonprofit that wants to start like discussions between leaders and students in our community.
Okay.
So during this pandemic, we're conducting interviews with a lot of local leaders. Um, and so since you're a lot involved with students and government and activism, we wanted to interview you and get your perspective um, on youth involvement.
Okay, cool. I will say, I think I mentioned this in the email. I don't really have much involvement with the government, just amnesty, um, and that sort of thing. So if I can't answer a few questions, I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's fine. We just want to ask about like youth involvement in general and activism
Oh,
and its impact.
okay. All
Yeah.
right. Let's get started.
Um, so our first question is, why do you think it's important for youth to be involved in activism efforts? And how do you think coronavirus is impacting our efforts?
Okay. Um, so as you know, and do you want me to make these long answers or
As long as you want, it's fine.
okay.
There's no, yeah.
All right. So as you know, I work with well, now I work in the southern region, but I used to work in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, and I worked with over 80 student groups. So I had the privilege of working with a lot of youth in that area. I think it's super important. Just just by working with the students that I worked with, their ideas are super creative. They're really out of the box. And I think that specifically for now, that's the type of activism that we need. Just just based on like who's our current president and how he's very active on Twitter and stuff like that, and social media platforms like that, and just technology nowadays, I feel like comes a little bit easier to the youth. Um, and I probably should put myself in that category, even though I'm not in high school or in college. Even then, I'm not really good with technology or anything like that. But anyways, I can see how impactful it is to have the youth a part of the movement. And if anything, I feel like they are the forefront of the movement.
And in general, how do you think youth can get involved and like in an effective way?
Okay, so there are tons of ways to get involved. I feel like the neat thing about activism is that you can really make it your own. Activism doesn't have one specific look. So like for example, if you're into science, there's activism within science. Art is a form of activism. So yeah, so it can look like anything. So like for example, for me, I'm like a like I'm very passionate about film. So I've worked with certain student groups that have done like film screenings. So like for example, they would do like a film screening on uh like a human rights issue. I believe one of them did it on blood diamond, right? And the trade of diamond and then diamonds, and they talked about that. So you can start the conversation simply with a film, or there are certain youth that are superstars. I mean, any activism is superstar activism, but that are into like like you guys, you're into like politics and stuff like that. And the reason why I say that that's superstar is because that's my concentration has always been in the arts and stuff like that. But yeah, so you can lobby, you can protest. There's so many different ways for you to get involved. And I think that activism and resistance it's very similar as well. So you don't have to be in the forefront of like protesting, just by just a regular act of resistance. That's another form of activism, in my opinion.
So going back to
Wait,
Corona.
question: who's gonna be seeing this? Because I realize that you guys are recording me. So I just want to make sure that you all know that these are my opinions and not of Amnesty International. Okay.
Yeah. We're just like interviewing people and posting what their perspective is during like this time, and we're posting it on like our social media
Okay.
and our website. So yeah, you definitely don't speak for like all of Amnesty
Okay.
International. It's just your
Yeah.
personal opinions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. So going back to coronavirus, how is coronavirus impacting human rights around the world? And then how can students and human rights activists in general take action against those impacts?
So I mean, COVID-19 is a human rights issue. It depends on what lens you want to look at it through. So just speaking on Amnesty's perspective on our campaigns, which is we're ending gun violence and welcoming refugees and immigrants. Just to touch on those two, I mean, since COVID-19 has started, I believe the sales of firearms have gone up. Also, domestic violence cases have gone up for the simple reason of, well, not simple, but the fact that folks need to stay at home, and sometimes home isn't the safest places. So it really depends on the lens that you're looking at it. And so in terms of healthcare as well, like who has access to healthcare, who has access to these tests. So I think it amplifies the issues that we are already fighting against. And how youth can get involved, I mean, going back to what I said, there's so many different ways. So for example, now I worked with youth in Georgia, Louisiana, and Florida, and I'm working with a student group here in Georgia. And they're kind of doing something similar to what you are all doing. They're creating this docuseries on Instagram, and each day they feature an expert, an Amnesty International expert. So, like for example, they have Ernest from our Ending Gun Violence campaign talk about how it affects how COVID-19 affects the ending gun violence work. And each day, I think it's up to 14 days, they have different people featured in their docuseries to highlight what's going on. And in between every I guess clip or episode, there's someone from their school talking about what human rights are. In terms of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they are also educating folks on what your rights are. So that's that, and they're super organized, they're a superstar group, and so that's a very specific way on how to do that. But then the film screenings, like I was talking to you about, how like right now people can't you can't be in large crowds, right? So a lot of things have transferred over to Zoom. And so they're having like these movie screenings, they're having panel discussions. You can still lobby, right? So we have efforts and actions on Amnesty International's website where you can write to your legislator, you can sign petitions. There's also, like, if you want to take a creative route, our unit, Organizing and Activism, we started this blog series. I think I've mentioned it in the email, I believe, on how you can write your own blog about what's going on or about human rights. So really, in any angle, you can really take your activism.
And also just in general, I guess, because of this crisis, a lot of people kind of feel like powerless or helpless because they can't really like control exactly what's going on. But in terms of activism, I know you have mentioned like what we can do, but what do you think like an everyday thing, what would an everyday thing be that we could maybe do to just contribute to the community and kind of relieve other people of this like helplessness in a sense?
I think it depends on the individual. I think knowledge is power. So I think having conversations like the ones that we're having now is important. For those that want to be involved at this time, because obviously everyone's going through different things. So for those that want to be involved and they want to contribute on a daily basis, I would say conversation. I would say take it to social media. I wouldn't normally recommend social media. I'm not really great at social media, and I do recognize some of the dangers of social media. But during this time, that's one of the main things that we have. So I would start a conversation on Instagram or on Twitter or on Facebook. I think, in my opinion, and again, I'll keep emphasizing my opinion, I think that one of the things that deters us, deters, I don't know, but deters. How do you say that?
I think it's deters.
Deters. One of the things that deters people from taking action is that I think that people have an idea that activism has to be like this grandiose thing, and it has to be like big, and that's not true. So I can tell you what I would do on a day-to-day basis, but I think that there are enough resources online and different orgs that focus on specific things. So Amnesty International is obviously a international human rights org, but there are other orgs that are specific to certain communities and certain issues. So I would recommend youth to go online and really research what they're interested in, because there's tons of things that they can do.
And then like, how have you seen like your activism actually impact legislation or policy? And what benefits have you seen from your action?
So I would say that I would probably have to speak collectively, because Amnesty, we work with our members and we work with different states, and we come together to take action together. So this is not directed towards any specific states that I've worked with, but I know that recently Colorado just abolished their death penalty, and that's work that Amnesty continues to do. But for Colorado specifically, they have been working for many years to get that abolished. So that's one example. We can talk about like international cases. We can talk about like Right for Rights, and our success stories through Right for Rights, where people have either been released or families have been informed of where the person is, or if the person is no longer with us. So examples like that, I would say. I think that with my activism and just the way that I work, I'm very community-based. So I think that we all come together and make a difference. And I do believe that there's a power in numbers. So in terms of my activism and how I contribute on a day-to-day basis, or even long-term, is building these relationships, allowing these conversations to happen, and really get people's minds thinking about creative ways to take action. And again, I think I keep going back to it doesn't have to look a specific type of way.
And then a final question, for all the youth that'll watch this, And like for an individual who wants to get involved, but doesn't know how, what would your message be to them, and like just high school students in general?
Well, I would say that they should contact me, and we can work together and we can get involved. But I would say if they have access to the internet, if they have access to faculty in their schools, if they have access to uh, adults that have similar interests, um, I would say reach out to them, do your research, um, and yeah, I feel like, and the reason why I say is that if they have access is that not everyone has access to internet, and not everyone has access to um, an education where they feel like they can be comfortable within their activism. So I'm saying if they have access to that, then I would definitely use those resources. But if not, I mean, I would say use you all. You're providing these platforms for people to get educated and to gain knowledge. So I think it's a ripple effect where they can contact you and you can contact me, and we can all work together towards making a difference.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
You're welcome. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. Side note, I am no longer, I think I told you this, but I am no longer the field organizer for New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. That is Ariel. So if you want another person to interview, and if she's available, she's also a great resource. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Yeah,
Hey.
bye.